Hello, welcome to the third daily coding challenge series, and today we will together to solve the problem with valid parenthesis string. So before we come to any coding part, let's have a look at the question we have here. The problem is that given a string containing only three types of character, the open bracket, the close bracket, and the asterisk, write a function to check whether this string is valid or not. We will define the validity of a string by these rules. First is that any left parenthesis must have a corresponding right parenthesis. Second, any right parenthesis must have a corresponding left parenthesis. Third, left parenthesis must go before the corresponding right parenthesis. Fourth, the asterisk could be treated as a single right parenthesis or a single left parenthesis on an empty string. And finally, an empty string is also valid. So basically, what we will do here is you will be given a string and you decide that it's valid or not. And among those three characters, this one is a magical asterisk. You can treat it as an open bracket or a closed bracket or just an empty string. So now we come to the example. Let's analyze the example to get a better understanding of the question. In example 1, you see the input you have as a first place an open bracket, and here is it corresponding close bracket. So the output should be true because the string is valid. In the second example, it's quite similar to the first one. You see here is the open bracket, here is closing bracket, and in this case, asterisk is treated as an empty string. So the string is also valid and the output is true. In the example 3, you have one open bracket. In this case, asterisk is treated as an open bracket. So here you have two open brackets in front of two closed brackets. So this should be valid and the output is true. So now we come to the coding. However, I would highly recommend that before we come to the coding part, you should pause the video for about 10 to 15 minutes to try to solve the problem yourself, because during the process of trying to think, to connect the ideas and solving the problem, you get more insight into the question and develop your logical thinking. And even if you cannot come up with a complete solution, it's still better for you to sketch out all your ideas and then compare your ideas to ours. So I will wait for you and have a good time. So now we come to our solution. Before coming directly to the coding part, I want to make sure that all of you understand one notion that we will refer to a lot in our algorithm. It is a variable left parenthesis. So why is it important? Because when you check whether a string is valid or not, you only care about the number of the available left parentheses, which means the number of the left parentheses that haven't found its right parenthesis. So let's understand this better by doing some example. For example, you see a string here. Now what we will do is that we will iterate over this string. In the first place, you see one open parenthesis, so the number of available left parentheses will be 1. Coming to the second place, it should be 2 because you discover another left parenthesis. So now the total number of available left parentheses is 2. However, when you come to the third place, the number of available left parentheses is reduced to 1. Why? Because here you discover a new closed parenthesis, which will correspond to either of the first two. So the number of available one should be only 1. And then similarly, coming to this place, you have only 0 available left parentheses because any open left parenthesis find corresponding closed parenthesis. Alright, so let's come to the second example where you have an asterisk and see how we solve it. So similarly, the first place is 1. In the second place, what you can do here is 2 because like the asterisk can be replaced by an open parenthesis. So the number should be 2, and in the last place it should be 1, right? Because you have one closed parenthesis here. So now you under the notion. Let's start and jump directly to our coding part, the most exciting one. So now we come to the real coding part of the problem. Firstly, in this method, I will declare two new variables. Int min is equal to 0 and int max is equal to 0. So what are the meaning of these two new variables? The int min is the minimized possible values of the number of available left bracket, and the max will be the maximized possible number of available left bracket. Next, we'll have a for loop for char current in s.toChar array. So this method will return a list of characters in the string s. So this for loop is that you iterate over the string s. And I will have three different conditional statements, which I will tell you the meaning later. If current is equal to the opening parenthesis, then min plus plus, else decrease min by 1. Another if statement, if current is equal to the closing parenthesis, then max minus minus, else max plus plus. And finally, the last if statement, if max is smaller than 0, then you should break. And in the end, min equal to the greater between 0 and min. Alright, so basically what we do in this for loop is to calculate the number of available left parentheses. So in this statement you see that if statement means that if you encounter a left bracket here, if current is equal to left bracket, then you should increase the number of min by 1. Else in this else you will have two possibilities, right? Else it is a close parenthesis, then obviously you can decrease min by 1. Or if it's an asterisk, then it could be interpreted as a close parenthesis. So because it's the minimized number, you should also decrease it by 1. In this if statement, if current is equal to the close parenthesis, you should decrease the max by 1. Else it could be an open parenthesis, so the max should be increased by 1. Or it is an asterisk, which could be interpreted as a open parenthesis, and the max should also be increased by 1. So that is our two if statement. Here we have one if statement. If max is smaller than 0, then you should break. So why do we have this statement? It is for the cases that we know that the current prefix can be made valid no matter what the other choices are. So before explaining this, let's have a look at the rule. The third rule, the left parenthesis must go before the corresponding right parenthesis. So this rule is for any cases that is like it. You see, you have a close parenthesis which have no corresponding left parenthesis like this. So no matter what are your other string left, this one is valid, but the whole string will never be valid because this parenthesis here will never have a left corresponding parenthesis. So this if statement is for such cases. And finally, the min must be equal to max dot max as the greater value between 0 or min. This is to ensure that your min value will never be negative, because sometimes when min is negative, you cannot do it next, right? Because like the min is a number of the available left parentheses and it can't be smaller than 0. So this one just to make sure that it will not be negative. And finally, you will return whether min is equal to 0 or not, because Only in the case that mean is equal to 0, it means that the number of left parentheses correspond to the right number of right parentheses, and that is valid. So let's check if we have the right answer. Alright, so it's accepted, which means our answers is right. So you understand the logic behind this algorithm? I will tell you a little bit more about the complexity of the algorithm. So firstly, about the space complexity. It will be a constant complexity, which means a 1. Why? Because you see here I use no additional space. I just declare two new variable, and that it just doesn't cost that much space. And about the time complexity, have a look here and see what should be the big O, right? It should be big O, O n. Why? Because you have the for loop, and the for loop iterate over the string s. So if the length of the string s is n, then the time complexity should be O n. So it's linear time complexity and constant space complexity. This is the most efficient solution that I have found so far. So if you have found any other solution that's more creative or you think will bring more efficient result, then don't be shy to share, and I look forward to meeting you in the next video. Bye bye.